Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here. SharePoint is a mature developer platform with a huge ecosystem and more than 700,000 developers. And with this release of SharePoint 2013 and Office 365, we're looking to take this to the next level and enable even more capabilities and opportunities. With this release, we're introducing a new cloud app model for SharePoint. This model is additive to the full trust solutions you write today. And the new model is built around three core tenets. The first is we want to simplify the development with SharePoint and make it consistent across both the SharePoint on-premise and the SharePoint running inside Office 365. Second, we want to make the execution model loosely coupled and enable you to build apps and write code that can run outside of the core SharePoint service. This makes it easier for you to deploy apps and avoid having to worry about breaking SharePoint or impacting the performance of SharePoint with those apps, or have to worry about compatibility issues when you upgrade. And third, we're implementing this loosely coupled model using open web standards like HTML, OAuth, JSON, and REST APIs. And this enables you to reuse your skills and tools and easily integrate SharePoint within existing web and mobile applications. And what I'm going to do here this morning is kind of show you how easy it is to take advantage of and some of the cool things you can build with it. So let's go ahead and move to our demo. And we'll go ahead and project our demo as well, please. Cool. So what you're seeing here is a SharePoint site that is hosted on Office 365. It's a sort of simple site here, and I've got an incidents list that's created within it, where you can see a bunch of incidents lists or incidents for my organization that I want to go ahead and correct and take care of. And this is just using the built-in UI here, as you can see. What I want to do now is take advantage of this new cloud app model to build a richer web experience around it. And to do that, I'm going to go into Visual Studio and create a new project. And so what you're seeing here is Visual Studio 2012. And I'm going to start by just saying File, New Project, and selecting a new app for SharePoint 2013 project template. I can give this a name. Hit OK. And this is now going to go ahead and create for me a new SharePoint project. It's pointing off to that site that's hosted inside Office 365 in the cloud. And you'll notice when there's one extra option. We're going to come back and explain this a little bit more later on in the demo. But it gives me an option of asking me, how do I want to host this project? And I can choose the auto-hosted model, which is the default, or what's called provider-hosted. Again, we'll explain that a little bit more a little bit later on in the demo. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit Finish. And this is now going to create for me a solution inside Visual Studio with two projects within it. The first one is a manifest project that has an XML file that contains settings about my SharePoint app. And the second project is a standard ASP.NET web application project. And one of the cool things about this loosely coupled model that we're introducing is the ability now for you to take advantage of all the features and capabilities that are in .NET, including the new version of .NET 4.5. And so in this case here, I have a web application project that's built using web forms. I can also now take advantage and build SharePoint apps using ASP.NET MVC, Web API, and all the cool new libraries that we have. And we're going to go ahead now and start taking advantage of those. And so I'm going to begin with here, because we're going to build kind of a richer incident list UI by just adding standard ASP.NET list view control into my HTML page. And this is just going to sort of format lists that incident data that I get back from the cloud into a kind of a more custom UI. I can then go to my code behind file, and this is the standard code behind template that I get when I create one of these SharePoint apps. And all I'm going to do here is just write a little bit of code that's going to connect to my SharePoint list in the cloud, retrieve it, and then you'll notice down here I'm just data binding it to that ASP.NET list view. And that's all the code I need to write in my view and as well as my code behind in order to format this data. The one last thing that I am going to do is just open up the manifest file for my project, and I'm going to basically indicate what this app needs in terms of from a permission perspective to run. And specifically, I'm just going to request read permissions from my list data inside SharePoint. And that's it. And now to run it, I'm just going to hit F5. And this is going to start, this is the very first time we've run this app. It's going to connect out to Office 365 in the cloud. and start registering this app locally. And if we switch to the slides, I'd like to walk through kind of what's happening here. This is the first one-time kind of step. And what I'm simply doing here is I'm going to run this application not in the cloud, not on a remote server, but actually on my local dev machine here. And I'm going to just use IIS Express that comes with Visual Studio in order to do it. What I'm doing as part of this process the very first time, though, is I'm uploading the manifest into Office 365 and registering my application. And this basically lets SharePoint know, hey, I got an app here locally that I'm connecting to. And it's going to set up a secure OAuth relationship so that my application can now communicate with Office 365 and use it to retrieve data, enable single sign-on, and coordinate across the two instances. But this loosely coupled model means that I can have code now running both on my dev machine that's integrated with all my data and other capabilities up in the cloud. So if we go back now to our dev machine, you'll see we finished here. Now we're actually back on the SharePoint site. And it said, OK, do you want to trust this app? I do. And I'm going to give it access to my incidence data. So I'll just go ahead and hit trust it. And this is now going to redirect me back. Well, it should have redirected me back. That must have been a Dreamweaver bug. And it redirected, see, it was. It redirected me back. And you can see here, sorry, anyone from the Dreamweaver team. You can see here sort of simple incident data here now displayed on this list. And so it's kind of just basic kind of hello world formatting. What's cool here to notice, though, as we zoom in, is it says localhost. And that's because this app here and all this UI that's being rendered is being rendered off my dev machine. But again, I'm retrieving that using a secure OAuth relationship with Office 365 from SharePoint in the cloud. Now, that's sort of hello world. Let's make this a little bit richer. I'm going to go into my UI, and what I'd like to do is have it kind of integrate and look a little bit more consistent with the rest of my SharePoint site. And so I'm just going to add in here a little bit of jQuery, so it's going to pull down the theme from my SharePoint site and have this local app use the same. I'm going to go ahead and just provide a Chrome view here, which is just a div with some styling on it to display it. And we'll hit F5 again. And this time it's going to be a little bit faster because it doesn't need to re-register with Office 365. Instead, it's just going to do the redirect back to me. And you can see now the same app here. We just made the change. I've now picked up the consistent look and feel and navigation structure from the rest of my site. And I now have kind of a consistent Chrome UI at the top there. And that kind of make a change, hit F5, see it live. That kind of rapid experience is now what's enabled as part of this loosely coupled model. And again, the beauty is here, I'm running this app and debugging it all locally on my dev machine. So this is kind of a simple app. Assume that we're going to make it a richer, and we could obviously make it a lot richer and add more capabilities. What I'm going to do here just to round out the auto-hosting model, though, is just going to walk through, assuming we made it a lot richer, how I can deploy this app now into the public cloud and allow other users besides my local machine actually hit it. Now I can package up this app and I can hand it off to an administrator to do that. Or now within Visual Studio, I can also go ahead and click this deploy link. And when I do that, I'm going to go ahead now and connect to Office 365. And you can see, again, some steps there where it's basically pulling that information. And once it basically retracts that app, it's going to start the installation process and begin uploading it. Let's go ahead and switch now to our slides and talk a little bit about what it's doing as part of this process. So we can switch to the slides there. Cool. So what's it doing? So basically, as part of this process, we're going to be doing a couple things. We're taking advantage of a model here that we call auto-hosted. And in the auto-hosted model, we can basically take advantage of this cool capability that we're introducing with SharePoint, which allows us to upload an application to the SharePoint service running in Office 365 and enable SharePoint to host it on our behalf using Windows Azure. This is a really cool capability that we're introducing that offers up a ton of capabilities and power as part of it. And one of the reasons why it's powerful is I don't, as a user, have to worry about deploying this app myself or as a developer. SharePoint takes care of it for me, and I'm leveraging the SharePoint service, and I'm leveraging Windows Azure in order to do it. And so basically, as part of this deployment process, all I'm doing is uploading now both the manifest as well as the web application, which Visual Studio is going to zip up and upload into SharePoint for me. SharePoint's then going to take that application, and instead of running it in the SharePoint service, it's instead talking to Windows Azure, and it's going to automatically provision that app on my behalf inside the Windows Azure cloud. And so it'll set up the site, set up all the appropriate security permissions, and wire up an OAuth connection, again, between Office 365 and between that app that's been hosted inside Windows Azure. I don't have to do any of that myself. It's all automatically handled by the system. And the beauty is, at the end of it, I basically have an application now that I can go ahead and run and deploy without having to buy a data center, pay for a data center, or even have to configure anything myself. So really powerful, offers up just sort of a ton of capabilities here that we can take advantage of. So let me just go ahead here and check. I'm going to switch over here to my backup here, and you can see this is a version of the app that's already deployed that I can take advantage of. And I'm going to just go ahead and say incidents. Click trust it. And what this is doing now is I'm as a user in Office 365, I just deployed using Visual Studio to that instance there. And I then clicked on Office 365, redirected, and this app is now running on the web. It looks just like my dev machine. But here's the cool thing, is if you zoom in and look at the URL, you notice this is no longer running on my dev machine. Instead, this is actually running off of the Office 365 apps domain. It's running in Windows Azure, in the cloud, connected with SharePoint, all the security wired up for me. I didn't have to do anything. All this is built in and provided by the system. So the cool thing is that is literally how easy it is in order to actually build and deploy apps. So we literally, from scratch, created a new project, built it, uploaded, debugged it, then uploaded it, and now it's running in the cloud. And it's, now I have, again, full power to use any of the features in .NET and Visual Studio, and I can integrate deeply as part of my SharePoint experience. Now, we also support, this is great in terms of from the ease of use perspective, we also support with the new SharePoint Cloud App model, a model we call provider hosted. Let's switch back to the slides and talk a little bit about that. So the beauty about the auto-hosted models, I don't have to worry about hosting at all. The system handles it all for me. I don't have to think about any of that. The nice thing about the provider-based model, though, is if I want to have the power to actually host the app myself, so I can take full advantage of my hosted environment, you can use this provider model instead. And what you do here is, instead of deploying the app to SharePoint, you just deploy the manifest, and then you basically can point at the app that's hosted anywhere. So in this case here, I could manually deploy my app to Windows Azure. It'll set up the OAuth relationship. And the beauty about me doing that is I now can use the Windows Azure Management Console to log in and manage that app, so I could scale it up and scale it down elastically. I can also now take advantage of all the Windows Azure features that are available within it so that I can integrate it and make my app even more powerful. So let's go ahead and switch back to the demo machine and walk through what that looks like. And so I'm going to go ahead now and log in to Windows Azure. One of the things that's kind of cool is we've integrated single sign-on between Office 365 and Windows Azure. So you notice that I didn't have to enter in a username password. It automatically handled that for me. And I'm now logged into my machine here. What I can do inside here, this is sort of the standard Windows Azure portal. So this is how we manage apps and services inside Azure. And I can very easily create new resources within it. So if I wanted to, I could create a new virtual machine. If I want to host a machine up there, if I want to create a website, so if I want to host one of these web apps, I could do that. So I could say Scott Demo, some random number, and create it. And one of the things we've really tried to do with Windows Azure is make things really fast and easy to use. And so you can see here I'm creating a new site hosted in our West data center. And you notice it's created. That's how fast it is to create a new site. And if I drill into it now, I basically have a web server already set up that I can deploy web apps to, and that's fully managed. That's just sort of an example of just how quick it is. If you want to create a database, that's really quick too. I could go ahead here, say I want a new SQL database, so I can do backing storage for my app, and I can say ScottDB, hit create, 1, 2, 3, done. And now I have a SQL database fully at my power that I can now use from within this application and start to use to store relational data. And I can create lots and lots of these different services, all very fast, all very fluid. And the beauty about this is I can now use any of these services from within my SharePoint applications. And so to take advantage of that, all I need to do here is I can go into Visual Studio. Again, I can use anything inside .NET to build it. So in this case here, I've actually modified our instance app not to use web forms, but instead to use MVC. And so there's a slightly richer version of this app here. And I have taken advantage of some of the new capabilities that we just shipped, including our new Web API support, so that I could actually have this MVC app expose to HTML JavaScript on the client, a richer set of views on top of my data. And then all I need to do is just go ahead and right-click and deploy this into Windows Azure in order to actually have it hosted. And in fact, just in the interest of time, I have it set up here already, an account that I've deployed that app into. And the cool thing is then I just take my manifest, upload it into the SharePoint service, and then when I click on that app now, it's redirecting me to that app that I've hosted inside Windows Azure myself using this provider-hosted model. And you can see now I have a much richer view on top of my list, even than what we had before. I can integrate nice animations. I can approve and deny things in a very slick way all through that web UI. And I have a nice kind of, again, very clean experience. And what's cool is because it's running in a website that I actually host and provide support for, I can now drill into the Windows Azure admin tool, and you can see I can see the traffic in real time that I'm getting on the site. Again, I can use any of the features in Azure, and then I can also take advantage of the scaling capabilities so that if I need more performance on this site, because I'm getting heavy usage, I could say I want to deploy this on top of a couple quad-core servers. All I need to do is hit save, and in about 20 seconds, this application, the SharePoint application, will now be deployed across 8 cores running inside Windows Azure, so I can handle a ton of load. And that's how easy and integrated we've made this experience. It offers just a ton of power and capabilities. So let's go back to the slides, and I want to talk about one more feature that we're adding as a developer capability that we can use. We talked about the ability to auto and provider host web apps. One of the other kind of cool things that SharePoint's supported for a couple releases now is the ability to use workflows. And these are great to automate back-end business logic and tasks, and we're taking them further with this new release. And specifically, we're taking that same loosely coupled approach that we took with web apps and also enabling it with workflows. And what this means is, as a developer, I can now upload my workflows to SharePoint, but instead of running those workflows in the SharePoint service or process, Office will automatically now deploy them to Windows Azure and set up an OAuth relationship with them. And this means I can now do long-running workflows. I don't have to worry about impacting the performance of my apps or my sites. And I can now use those workflows to kick off background tasks and integrate across my enterprise. And so we go back to our demo machine now. You can see a simple example of this in action. Here is the same solution that I had for my UI. You notice I now have also a workflow app within it, or workflow project within it. And I'm basically just defining a custom workflow that I want to run every time something gets modified in that list data. And so you can see, for example, when the list data starts, if it's approved, when we save an item in that UI, I'm going to say send an email to the user that it's assigned to. And what we've done is just added another branch into the workflow, which says if it's high priority, I also want you to send an SMS message to their phone so that they know they need to get on it right away. And what's cool is we're using the new workflow designer that shipped with VS 2012 and the new workflow features in .NET 4.5. And if I drill in, you can see this is a simple Twilio SMS workflow, custom workflow that I've created, and I'm just calling out to the REST APIs. And Twilio is a great partner of ours with Windows Azure, and so integrating this way is really easy and kind of, again, shows off some of the power of what you can do by taking advantage of SharePoint and Azure together. So now if we go back into our web app here, let's test it out. Let me go ahead and take this one here. I'm going to mark it as being on high, and maybe we can show their phone here as well. I'm going to go ahead and approve this workflow. And so this is approving the workflow, updating the item in the back end there. It's going to kick off a workflow that's going to do many things. Send an email to the user. It's also going to call out to Twilio and request an SMS message. And then Twilio is then going to take the user data, to figure out the cell phone number, send it to Twilio. Twilio then is going to send the SMS message. And you can see here, even in a room of 10,000 people, we got the message. You click it. This is now connecting back to that same app that's the web app now that's hosted inside Azure in the self-hosted or the provider-hosted model, and this person can now go ahead and approve it. And that's all live, all bouncing across multiple clouds, all sending SMS messages and Wi-Fi with 10,000 people in a room. And so that is quite exciting to see work, and I think hopefully tests to the power of this loosely coupled model and the fact that it really enables you to bring together lots of systems in a very, very reliable way, such that we can demo it here. So let's go back to the slides here. So hopefully you've seen here just sort of some of the opportunity from a developer perspective that this gives you with this new model. It's just tons and tons of extensibility, a lot more powerful apps that you can build, and we just walked through a handful of these features. And there's going to be a lot more details about this throughout the breakout talk. And as you saw, this just really enables just a ton of power and capabilities. What we're also trying to do with this release is enable you to more easily monetize these capabilities as well. And we're doing that by integrating the concept of a SharePoint store directly into the product. And so with the SharePoint store, users browsing SharePoint can go ahead and browse an app gallery of solutions that you build, and they can then very easily, in a one-click way, go ahead and deploy and use them for their sites. And they can use either that auto-hosted model, where we'll deploy and host that app for you automatically, or the provider-hosted model, where you can stand up your own SaaS backend, for example, with Windows Azure, and control it that way. And if you're an IT professional, good news is there's also IT governance built into the store, so you can control exactly which apps are available and who has rights in order to purchase them. And we think this end result ends up being super powerful and capable and opens up a ton of opportunities. You can also, if you want to bypass the store as a developer ISV, you can also continue to sell apps to customers directly and still take advantage of this loosely coupled cloud app model. So we're really excited about this new cloud app model. We really think it opens up a ton of opportunities and experiences, and really going to let you take SharePoint forward in wonderful, wonderful, unique ways. And we're really excited to see what you create with it. So thanks a bunch and enjoy the conference.